I feel so privileged to be invited to come to Lima and to Peru, a country I've wanted to visit my whole life. But to be invited not only to come as a tourist, but to collaborate with local artists and designers, technicians. It's been amazing. And it's one of the kindest people I've met in the world. I think they're equal to the people I met in Thailand when it comes to kindness. I feel welcomed, it's warm. The dancers have really given all the energy they could to this production, all the concentration. They've made a lot of sacrifice. It's been a very intense 4 weeks because we had to teach a whole program that actually features a lot of steps and a lot of dancing, a lot of steps they've never done before, or a style that they've never even approached before, and they had to assimilate this material in less than 4 weeks. So in every way, it's been challenging, rewarding, beautiful, inspiring, a time in my life I think I will never forget. Well, Carmen, I set in the as a period piece. I did not want to set it in our modern times because somehow the strength of Carmen and her being an eternal icon, I think for the women's movement and for women's freedom, is a piece that when you set it in another century, you realize how old this warning actually is, how old the information is in this opera or in the novella, because I really studied the original novella by Prosper de Mérimée to stage my libretto. So I wanted to set it in a period that is a long time ago because it's an old story, and sadly, it's an old story that's being repeated. I think it will be different for every audience member, and I don't want to, tell audience members how they should feel about this story. One thing is for sure, is I tell the women dancing the role of Carmen that it's a very big responsibility they have. I tell them that, in the audience, at every show, there will be a woman, maybe two, maybe three, who goes home and is abused by her husband. And that male testosterone is still dangerous to many women and violent, and that ego that seems to be so destructive in Don Jose lives in many men today. And so what I want people to see is that Carmen is the voice for these women in the audience. She is their voice to the world about what men are capable of. She herself commits no crimes. She tempts the men to commit crimes. And so in that way, she's a temptress. And I think that's why she's iconic, because she shows to the world what men are capable of. When I met Elton John, because when I created these portrait ballets, which some people call pop ballets, I created with David Bowie and Elton John and many Canadian singers as well, is I try to understand not just their songs, but their life and their philosophy of life. And so for that to really occur, for that to be successful, I have to meet them. So there's a difference between just getting the rights to choreograph a ballet to Elton John and meeting Elton John. And I always prepare many questions for them, profound questions about their philosophy of music, their personal life and how it connects to their music. And because I'm not a journalist, they really tell me a lot about their life. They open up much more. And one thing Elton John told me was that I needed to not be afraid to use his life to inspire people to understand what is a drug addiction, what is sexual repression, what is bulimia. And he also was an alcoholic. And so he was very self-destructive. It's a miracle he is still alive. He almost died twice. And then when you think of Amy Winehouse, when you think of Whitney Houston, and all those other singers who are still today have died at a very young age, it's a miracle Elton John survived. So he wanted me to create a ballet inspired by the challenges of his life, and then how he turned his life around because of love. And now he has raised more than $300 million for causes that reach out from AIDS to outreach groups for sexual identification around the world. I think the biggest challenge of adapting Elton John for the Ballet Municipal de Lima really came in how the dancers could absorb the material. Because when I created Elton John, it was very much inspired by the dance of the 1970s when he was very, very famous, how this dance styles evolved then, mixed with contemporary choreography, hip-hop, breakdance, neoclassical ballet, contemporary ballet. There's many styles of dance in Elton John. Some of it inspired by the great Broadway shows, Las Vegas shows that Elton John did, or by Bob Fosse, the great choreographer of Broadway. So it's also very much inspired by my own style of neoclassical ballet. And so for the dancers, I think in 4 weeks, rehearsing 3 hours a day, they probably had to learn over 13,000 different steps between all the songs and Carmen, different lifts, how to lift the women that they've never done before. And so it's an intense period of learning for them. And each song has a different style of movement. Some are much more classical, some are much more contemporary. And so their brain has to adapt and their mind has to adapt to this wide array of styles in one evening of dance. The Elton John suite features 4 designers, along with myself: video designer, soundtrack designer, costume designer, lighting designer. And each of these designers, I gave them the task to study Elton John and all the crazy costumes he wore in his own life. Because during the 1970s, pop music was about surrealism, escapism. David Bowie, Elton John, everybody was wearing costumes and makeup. So we had a lot to choose from, a lot. His repertoire of costumes, we found the books that featured everything he ever wore. So all the costumes you're going to see are inspired by costumes Elton John actually wore on stage. The video is actually inspired by England and London and his cultural roots, the flag of England. Sometimes it's also representative of what's going on inside of his head, his own fantasies. So the Adam Larson, who created the video projections, is based in New York City. He works all over the world with the greatest conductors, theater directors. He's one of the finest video art content creators in the world. And so what you're going to see is his own imaginings of Elton John's music and fusing the aesthetics of England, even Stanley Kubrick, A Clockwork Orange, this famous film that we were inspired by to create the inner demons. And so each character was born from his life or from English cultural imagery. What I hope the audience feels when they leave the theater is that they've understood something more about Elton John and what inspired his music and what inspired his complete transformation today. Also, there's this extraordinary melodies and rhythms that Elton John, no one else can write or compose. It's a lot of fun. People will be tapping their feet. Someone might be singing along. And I find that for dance audiences, not a Peruvian audience, for me it's a dance audience that I'm looking at, and all dance audiences are similar around the world. I want them to come out of seeing that ballet feeling elated, inspired by the music that takes you to another level, because that's why he's one of the greatest singer-songwriters of the 20th century. But Elton John also wanted he wanted new audiences to come to the ballet and discover dance for the first time, because he himself loves ballet and dance, and he wanted to help us bring new audiences to the theater. So if they can leave the theater inspired, having seen dance they've never seen before and what it could do, and then say, wow, I understand dance now through the music of my icon, Elton John, then we have succeeded. And I checked, Elton John's been to Lima 3 times. And that's why what's incredible about Elton John is we could dance it anywhere in the world. They know him in China. He's very famous all over the world. And as his manager said to me one day, and it's true, notice that you will never pass a week in your life without hearing Elton John. In an elevator, in a restaurant, in an interview, a movie, Elton John will appear in your life once a week for the rest of your life. So I hope you like his music. I certainly do, and I hope people will like his music even more after they see the ballet.